In today's video, we are going to go over bridge variations. Do you use a band? Do you not use a band? What's the best position? Do you put the bench underneath your shoulders? What is the best bridge variation for you? In this video, you're going to learn why bridging is such a valuable exercise if you have any type of like a gait deviation. And based on that kind of abnormal movement pattern with your walking, figuring out what the best bridge variation is for you to address that specific part of the gait cycle to smooth out or normalize your walking, improve your walking efficiency and your walking speed. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel, our goal is to empower you with as many tools as possible to take ownership of your health and your overall mobility. And all that said, let's just dive right in. What does bridging do? Why is it such a valuable exercise? So we're going to start very basic. A bridge, most of you learned at some point in physical therapy, or you've seen it on the internet. It's just when you're laying on your back, knees are bent, and you lift your hips. What muscle is it working? What movement is it working? It's working hip extension. What is hip extension? Hip extension, if your foot is off the floor, is bringing the leg backwards. That's hip extension. If the foot is on the ground, it's bringing the upper part of the torso or the upper part of the body to vertical, but that is what we call a single plane of motion. And just to keep things complicated, our hip joint is not a single plane of motion joint. It's what we call a ball and socket joint. And all that said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into talking about this bridging exercise. First, what does a bridging exercise do? Is it extends the hip. So if your foot's off the ground, it brings the leg backwards. If your foot is on the ground, it brings the upper body up, right? From the hip up, it kind of brings that hip up. And that would be great if the hip joint was what we call a single plane joint, meaning it just moves in one direction. But of course, that's not the case. It's a ball and socket joint. So what does that mean? It means that it moves in all planes of motion. And that's why you see so many variations of that bridge exercise. It's not just working on that one hip extension motion. People put their variations on it depending on what they think someone is trying to address or what type of movement someone's trying to address. So this would be a ball and socket joint. See, it moves in all directions. That's kind of how our hip joints work, forwards and backwards. But if the foot's on the ground, what else can happen is that can drop. So we got to take that into consideration. It can rotate. It's a ball and socket. It can move in all directions. So we're going to go through why that matters and why that should impact the type of bridge that you're selecting, given that this is a ball and socket joint. Now, let's go through the gait deviations and how that should impact what bridge selection you choose. Number one, if your leg caves in when you're standing on it, you can see that that just doesn't look natural, right? So that means that your hip muscles might be working because you didn't hit the ground, right? It was able, your foot was on the ground, you didn't fall. But some of the muscles that control that ball and socket joint or prevent it from rotating might be involved, primarily the ones that externally rotate. So if that is you and you're standing on that leg and your knee collapses in, that would be an opportunity where you would want to externally rotate your legs as you're extending. So you're doing a bridge with that external rotation. For that, the position that might be beneficial is having your feet kind of close together, band around your knees, splitting those knees apart, and then doing that hip extension. If you have the opposite problem and your leg goes out to the side, when you're standing on it, there could be a variety of things that cause that, which is beyond this video. I've made tons of videos on a rotated leg. So just type in Rehab HQ and rotated leg and you will find a lot of those videos. But one potential problem is that you have a difficulty in controlling the muscles that rotate that leg in as you are extending, right? Or bringing your body forward or keeping your upper body upright, vertical when you're stepping. And if that is you, then you would want to work on isolating internal rotation with that hip extension. Okay, so if your leg rotates out, pretty kind of intuitive that you would want to rotate it in and work that extension. So putting something in between your legs to activate that internal rotation as you do that bridge. For some of you, you can't activate those muscles at all when you try and extend your hips. So in that case, you'd want to strap your knees together. Next kind of walking deviation is hip drop, meaning when you stand on the leg, you might be able to keep your chest up, but the hip drops out to the side. If that is you, then you would want to work abduction. So when the hip drops, it sometimes means that you don't have good control of the muscles that abduct. So when the opposite hip drops, that's what we call adduction. The legs are coming together. Just means you might not have good control of that hip extension with a deduction. So then that's what you would want to work on. So for that, I would recommend or suggest just starting with your feet kind of shoulder width apart on the mat, band around the knees to work that abduction with that hip lift. And then the last one that we're going to go over, which isn't really like a bridge, but I put it in the bridge category, is if you're someone that you feel like your weight always stays back. Again, multiple reasons. A lot of times it's coming from the ankle, but sometimes it's coming from the hip, and that you just can't extend that hip when you're stepping forward. And for that one, that particular one, because here what you're trying to do is we're trying to extend the hip and the knee at the same time. Usually the exercise or bridge variation that I like for that is legs on a gym ball and doing a hip lift. In all instances, if these are the things that you're working on, so if you're working on bridge specifically for one of these gait impairments that I talked about, in all instances, you want to think about that additional motion, whether that's external rotation and or abduction or internal rotation. You want to be thinking about that motion as you're lifting your hips. You don't just want to be thinking about lifting your hips up, but we're trying to remember it's a multi-plane joint. We're trying to get multiple muscle groups to activate together at the same time to normalize your walking. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. If you're new to this channel, you might not know this, but we do have handouts that go along with a lot of these videos here on YouTube. This video does have a handout that has pictures and descriptions of all of the bridge variations that I just went through, with a brief explanation of why each one is important as far as gait deviations or walking impairments. To get access to that PDF handout, you do need to be a gold or a bronze monthly member. To learn more about our membership programs and all the perks that are included, you can visit rehab-hq.com. But hopefully, if you like this video, you would be willing to hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. That's completely free, and it really does help these videos to reach more people. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.